Good evening, everybody. Closing arguments today in the New York trial of President Donald Trump. Corrupt judge Merchant screamed at Trump's lead attorney, Todd Blanche, when he made a quip about Alvin Bragg's prosecutors only wanting to send President Trump to prison. And tonight, a disturbing development, leading many to believe that the fix is already in for a Trump conviction and imprisonment. CBS News reporting Secret Service have met with jailhouse officials to prepare for President Trump to go to prison. And joining us now to give us the very latest on all of this is Ben Bergquam, host of Law and Border. Tonight, Ben coming to us from outside the Manhattan courthouse. Ben, what is the latest?
Well, you mentioned it. What's interesting about that is the judge Marchant in this case, when that was brought up, the point was brought up. The defense actually had the chance. They finished their closing arguments before lunch today, and that was brought up. And the defense said, that what they want to do is put President Trump in jail. And I'm paraphrasing, but that's the gist of it, and that's clearly what they want to do. And Judge Marchant came back and said that's outrageous, and he's going to notify the jury and let them know basically that they have to dismiss that thought, and they can't take that into deliberation. But clearly, that's the objective in all of this, is to take Trump off the campaign trail and ultimately put him in jail or worse. So it is. It's pathetic. And it's beyond that. Today they have a press conference out, and Democrats show up, and they basically, Joe Biden can't get anyone to show up at his own thing. So he comes to the trial that he's created, his DOJ's created. The whole thing is just, it's an injustice system at work in America.
Yeah, this is they're turning New York into a Marxist gulag, for crying out loud. They've gone well beyond. All of the top legal minds in the country say, and watching this trial, Ben, as you know, they're saying there's no case here. There is no way there shouldn't be an acquittal. There is no way the prosecution should prevail. Yet we all know that this Marxist Dem district attorney, sponsored by George Soros, Judge Merchant himself is a Biden contributor, a Marxist Dem. His whole family makes a living out of raising money for the Marxist left in this country. I don't see how you could say anything other than this is as crooked as it gets. And if he is acquitted here, I think it will be a sign from on high. Your thoughts?
Yeah, I think an acquittal is highly unlikely. I think a mistrial is potential. I mean, you only need one, and that's our prayer, is that one person has the courage to stand up. And all of this, it was a foregone conclusion. I think that whole jury pool was selected intentionally, that basically the entire trial was a sham to take President Trump off the campaign trail, but ultimately with the expectation that they were going to find him guilty. Whether or not they put him in jail, it's all about delegitimizing him and saying he doesn't have a right to be there, not just for Democrats, but for the rhinos on the right, for the Nikki Haley squads on the right as well. That's all what this is about. And just to give you an idea, I was in the courtroom this morning, and actually DA Bragg was in the courtroom. As far as I know, he's back in there now. He's watching this, salivating over this entire thing. And there was a clip played from Michael Cohen, an audio clip, where he was bragging about being excited about President Trump going to jail and how great DA Bragg is and all this. And I saw one of the jurors actually in that clip look at DA Bragg and smile at him. So if that gives you any idea of what is potentially coming, I mean, the whole thing was corrupt from the beginning. But the question is, as you said, if this flips, if there's one juror that has the courage to stand up against it, it will be incredible. But either way, we're also seeing the other side of that, where even with this, people are waking up that this injustice that's happened against President Trump, it's not about President Trump. It's about the delegitimizing of our entire justice system in America.
It is. And, Ben, you've spent time in that courtroom. Let me ask you this. I mean, do you think there's any sense whatsoever in that courtroom that the people on trial now are the George-sponsored DA, Alvin Bragg, the Biden donator, Juan Merchant, and his daughter and his wife, all involved in party politics and fundraising, and we're talking about tens of millions of dollars. And in fact, they fundraised off this trial and her father's judgeship in all of this. It is impossible to think that these people are completely blissfully unaware that they're on trial, uh, perhaps to an even greater extent, actually, than President Trump himself. Your thoughts?
Yeah, I think if anyone with a rational mind looking at this objectively would say this should be a mistrial already, and even if there is a conviction, I think it opens itself up to an immediate appeal and potential mistrial or acquittal based on just the absolute fraud in the entire thing. As you mentioned, Judge Marchant being a political actor, donating to Biden, his daughter raising millions of dollars for the Democrat National Committee on this trial specifically, and President Trump on top of that, insult to injury, not even being allowed to tell the truth, while people like Michael Cohen, the convicted liar, and one of the best lines today from his President Trump's defense, the gloat, the greatest liar of all time, while he's able to do whatever he wants, all of it just points to this entire thing should be thrown out. If we actually had justice in this country, it already would have been, but we'll see. And then ultimately the question becomes, when and if, and that's my prayer, President Trump does win in November, how do we back this out of our country? How do we get rid of the Bragg, the Soros-backed DAs that have destroyed our justice system in the first place?
Well, with a lot more energy and focus than any Republican has attempted so far in responding to the Marxist Dems who've taken over the federal government, as well as the Democrat Party. Ben, as we wrap up here, the president's mood when last you saw him in the courtroom?
Well, I actually saw him walk out for lunch. And what was interesting, I got to smile. I gave his Don Jr. a thumbs up and smiled at him. He smiled back. I actually got to interview him right afterwards. But what was interesting is President Trump, as he walked out, was staring Lawrence O'Donnell right in the face, one of these Trump derangement syndrome leftists. To me, President Trump's mood is war. These guys have brought war. They're attacking him and his entire family, and he's bringing it. He is more determined than ever in what I see.
Well, I hope every Republican in the country and everyone in MAGA world is bringing it, because this is a fight for the soul, for the country itself. And Ben, thanks so much for your reporting and all that you do. Ben Bergquist, thanks so much.
Thank you, sir.
And despite all of that, all of the political persecution of President Donald Trump, he is polling better than ever, and his lead over Joe Biden is widening. No wonder Judge Merchant in New York is having fits in his courtroom. Trump's numbers are stronger now than they were in 2016 or 2020. But perhaps the best indicator of President Trump's dominance is the fact that Democrats are in what some are calling a full-blown freakout right now. Here's a quote from Politico. Quote, "The gap between what Democrats will say on TV or in print and what they'll text their friends has only grown as worries have surged about Biden's prospects. The Marxist Dems know they're on a path to electoral disaster in November. Meanwhile, last night, Joe Biden made a surprise visit to former daughter-in-law and Hunter's ex-girlfriend, Haley Biden, just a week ahead of her testimony in Hunter's gun trial. Haley will serve as a witness in Hunter's federal trial on alleged gun crimes. Haley dated Hunter around the time the alleged crimes took place. The affair between Haley and Hunter began shortly after Joe's other son, Beau Biden, died of brain cancer. Meanwhile, we find out the Bidens used Joe's appearance at a Sandy Hook memorial to set up a meeting between Hunter, Joe, and James with a Chinese business partner. That to negotiate a $10 million a year deal with a Chinese energy company, CEFC. That's according to the House Ways and Means Committee, which uncovered Hunter's text messages to a senior executive of CEFC. Well, morally and ethically bankrupt behavior is a well-established theme for the Biden family. And turning now to the Indo-Pacific, where China appears to be preparing to seize Taiwan. A conflict with China over Taiwan would engulf the world in a catastrophe, the likes of which we haven't seen since World War II. These are precarious times that require clear-eyed analysis and considerable experience in judging the behavior, the conduct, the motivation of the Communist Chinese. Russ Tice brings all of those qualifications and more to the table. He is a former senior intelligence analyst for the National Security Agency. He is an Air Force veteran, worked with the Defense Intelligence Agency, and joins us now. Russ, great to see you, and thanks for being with us. As you and I have discussed over these many months, uh, China keeps signaling that they intend to do something with Taiwan, whether it's an outright invasion, whatever it might be. But now the China apparently is in preparation, making it at least look as though they're in preparation to invade Taiwan. Do you think this time they mean to do it?
At this direct time, no, I don't think. I think this is another show of force, and President Li's just been inaugurated. So this is the same sort of thing they did when Nancy Pelosi stopped by, and they were upset with that, and the same thing they did when the former president, the TTP or TPP president, the People's Party candidate won, Miss Tsai Ing-wen. So. But for timing, remember, Lou, we talked about this heck a year ago now. One of the main things you got to worry about is weather, and right now they're in the midst of what they call the plum spring rains. So it's just a tad muddy right now to be doing a full-fledged invasion. As far as an invasion this year, there's just a small time frame when the weather would be optimal, and that's going to be mid-October to towards the end of November. That's when the weather would be best for doing something like this, if the Chinese are going to look at the best weather for something like this year.
Some of the intelligence analysts that are right now being quoted by the national corporate media, at least, are talking about it wouldn't take days, but rather hours, to launch an effective landing force on Taiwan. Do you agree with that rosy outlook?
Yes and no. They seem to think that with the lack of amphibious landing gear or crafts, with say Higgins boats inside, like our D-Day invasion we had, the Chinese don't have that capability. So they seem to, what I'm reading right now is they seem to think that they're going to use ferry boats in an initial landing after subduing the beach. With, I assume they mean just with rockets and air attacks. Well, you know, that's not going to work, because the Taiwanese still have the capability, and they've dug into those hills with anti-ship missiles that we've supplied to Taiwan. Unless they get boots on the ground in mass on those beaches, they cannot subdue those beaches. I don't care how many ferry boats that you commandeer from the mainland. So they're going to have to do something else. I kind of think that the Chinese are probably in the latter stages of completing like souped up Higgins boats that can make the transfer the 100 miles across the straits.
And in terms of what we're seeing through imaging, uh, what are we seeing in way of troop buildup that would lead to the possibility, at least, of an invasion by the Communist Chinese? Is it adequate at this point, or do you think that that's a further signal to support your view that it would be fall this time?
Well, the air bases along the coast for the mainland have already been beefed up within the last several months. The missile forces have really been souped up as well on the mainland. So this is sort of, these things don't happen overnight. It's sort of, you have to sort of start to put the pieces in together incrementally, and that has been happening. So I mean, it could happen now, but like I said, the weather just isn't conducive for that. One of the things I think the Chinese have to worry about, I mean, aside from the weather, is the fact that they may have a different president come after 20 January, that they're not going to be able to just push around like a beach ball in a swimming pool.
Right, a U.S. president, and you think that that would be formidable enough for them to hit pause on whatever thinking they're doing right now about the fall for an invasion. it just seems strange to me that we're watching a conflation of events right now, that whether it be Russia and Ukraine, whether it be the nonsense coming out of NATO, talking about they want to have U.S. weapons launched. The new Secretary General saying he thinks it'd be a grand idea to use Western weaponry for the Ukrainians to fire into Russia. I mean, we're talking about one provocation after another, and not necessarily state to state, but we're talking about provoking, if you will, any kind of reasonable circumstance that could lead to a settlement, a ceasefire, a truce between Russia and Ukraine. It looks like everyone, including the Biden regime, is looking some ways askance at the possibility that Vladimir Putin might mean it when he says he's ready to use tactical weapons.
Well, right now the Russians are massing another force on the border, and this is conventional boots on the ground. And it looks like he's waiting for the last of the mud to dry out from the spring rains, and that he's coming soon into another big push. So it looks like the Russians have a whole lot of boots on the ground that are lining up on that border, and that they're ready for a late spring offensive into Ukraine. And it looks like they intend to take Kharkov. So I think the president of Ukraine is getting desperate, and he thinks that he's going to be able to sling things into Russia and to quell that sort of thing. I mean, everyone seems to forget the Russians have nukes, and we're not playing tiddlywinks here. This is the real thing. So, and of course, like you mentioned, no one wants to talk peace. No one wants to say, let's sit down and let's stop this killing. Someone needs some common sense.
This is not. It'll be taken as just partisan positioning, but the reality is there's no one in this administration who seems to have any understanding of either the stakes or the policies that would work toward peace rather than war. These fools in the national security apparatus, it's outrageous what we're watching, from the Secretary of State, Anthony Blinken, to Jake Sullivan in the National Security Council. I don't know why in the world they are in the positions they are, other than the fact that they were on the Obama team. They should not have even been on the backup team. It's appalling to see the level of stupidity that they're bringing to foreign policy under this Biden regime.
Well, perhaps they're all looking forward to after January, when they're starting to make the big bucks with the military-industrial complex, as they step through that revolving door, and they're going to be making the big time money very soon. So hence, war is good for the profit margin in that arena, as far as the warmongers are concerned.
Speaking of warmongering, we're watching again this administration do all it can to confound the Israelis, our ally, and I can't make head nor tails of what they actually want to see as a result here, because they keep going after Israel rather than Hamas. They keep supporting Iran rather than Israel. They continue to just confound reason, judgment, experience, history, and to think that we've still got another 5 months of these fools with their hands very near the trigger, if not on it. Where do you think this is leading with Israel and Hamas and Iran?
Well, anyone in the past that's had a qualm with some of the things that the nation of Israel has done, but look what happened after October the 7th. I tried to look at some of the details of that, and I had to turn it off. I was so disgusted that this is barbarism, and Hamas has to be eradicated, and we need to be cheering Israel on to wipe this scourge off the face of the planet.
This is a major divide in this country now. I didn't know how profound it was when initially we saw the demonstrations for pro-Hamas demonstrations, the anti-Israel demonstrations, the anti-Semitism that is steeped now on college campuses, university campuses across the country. This is a very serious moment in history, and I have no confidence whatsoever that Joe Biden knows what's going on, let alone what to do about it. But I do know that also the reports that the Biden regime is calling on all of our allies to back off and to not, as they put it, press Iran at this moment because of their enriched fuel program that is on the brink of being weapon ready, as many as 3 weapons based on the level of enriched uranium that they have processed. You're thinking about why they're asking allies to not press Iran. If there were any time to press them, it would seem to be now.
Apparently, they're delusional in thinking that if we don't press Iran, that Iran is just going to come to the bargaining table and we're going to bargain whatever they have out of existence. These people are fools. Right now, the Gulf states have the most to worry about because, I mean, Iran can't sling them this far as hitting our coast, but they can certainly send them to the other side of the Persian Gulf. So, then they become a very viable threat. You think oil prices, their gas pump prices are pretty steep now. Wait till that happens, and the Americans are paying $8 to $9 average for a gallon of gasoline at the tank.
Russ, thanks so much. We appreciate it as always. Russ Tice, a great American. Michael Pillsbury, a China Strategy Senior Fellow at the Heritage Foundation. He joins us this evening to take up what dangers are on the horizon, particularly when it comes to the CCP. Michael, great to have you. Great to see you again. Let's start with all of suddenly there's a dust up of views about whether or not China is ready to invade Taiwan. Are they, and will they?
Well, the problem, Lou, is that Chinese military doctrine for decades has been to use the surprise attack as their principal approach. They did this very successfully against Harry Truman and Douglas MacArthur. They surrounded American forces with 300,000 troops when we did not know that they were there. So their approach to Taiwan tends to be similar. I read a lot of Chinese military writings about how they're going to invade Taiwan. And they all begin with the same point. We must do it in a surprising manner. So there's another term that's used that's related to this called desensitization. Desensitization was used by the Egyptians with advice from the Russians against Israel, where the Egyptians ran about 25 military exercises of a very threatening nature over a 2-year period, much like what is happening around Taiwan now. These are very threatening exercises. They look like they're a blockade, but they could evolve into an invasion. What happened is the Egyptians on the 26th exercise turned it into a real war, and they got deep into Israel that way. So what China probably wants to do is desensitize Taiwan and frankly the US, that we're only doing exercises, and then have a surprise attack at Taiwan's weakest point. And the problem there is Taiwan has a lot of weak points. We've been trying to encourage them in various ways to have a conscription, to have their military service last more than 6 months, to buy the right kind of weapons that could take down Chinese communist weapons. But in Taiwan, there's a strong belief this will never happen. They faced it for so many decades and it never happened. They've got almost 2 million Taiwanese now who live on the mainland. They have what they call mainland wives. They'll keep their wife and family back in Taiwan and marry a mainland girl. Investment from Taiwan is going up in China, just as our investment is going up in China. So this is a confusing situation where when people look back on 2024, 2025, they'll be saying, why didn't Lou Dobbs and Michael Pillsbury alert us to this invasion that was coming? But it's hard to do that when Taiwan itself is not too afraid of being invaded.
Well, it's also very hard to alert the U.S. About the
Mhm.
dangers represented by the CCP, by Iran, by Russia, in point of fact, the various threats that are now surrounding the United States right now might as well be an island for all that we're doing to protect our
Mhm.
borders, to assure our sovereignty and our national security. But when it comes to Taiwan, I think there is a rationalization that's readily available for the Taiwanese, and that is they know that they alone cannot withstand the
Mhm.
CCP's armies, navy, and have to rely on the United States for their existential continuation. Do you disagree?
No, that's exactly right. And what both sides depend on is our having operational linkages between the two militaries, sharing frequencies, doing exercises together, doing training together. And that's what China's persuaded Henry Kissinger and then Jimmy Carter to cut off. So we have not had exercises, training, joint war plans with Taiwan since about 1980. That's 40 plus years, Lou, in which our two
Yeah.
militaries do nothing together. And that's the heart, as you're pointing out,
Uh,
that's the heart of
unless
what has to happen.
unless Mark Milley's on the line talking to his counterparts in Beijing. Uh, that didn't work out too well for either him or for us, or for that matter, uh, possibly the Chinese. We're well beyond, it seems to me, the the joint military exercises, the joint programs, exchange
Mhm.
programs between militaries or their diplomats, for that matter, national security officials and ours. It looks to me like this is a hardened relationship now. Very concrete, specific differences that aren't going to move. For example, whether it be a international balance of payments, whether it be
Mhm.
our deficit with China, whether it be uh, the reality that we're now both countries are 2 hours away from one another with hypersonic missiles. We're at a very, it seems to me, a very bright, flashing red moment
Mhm.
in that relationship. What do you think?
I think that's right, but there's another phenomenon going on that's equally frightening to me. That's the policy paralysis in Washington. Uh,
Mhm.
Heritage Foundation put together a list of about 100 policies a year ago to start trying to track, is there legislation? Is there an executive order? Is anything happening on any of these issues? One of them, for example, was the TikTok uh, issue. And we found nothing is being done on any of the 100 issues. It's really quite shocking. It's a kind of policy paralysis where the Democrats oppose anything the Republicans want to do. The Republicans seem to want to avoid the China issue. There's a huge split in the party, as you know, between what I would call the Wall Street wing. The Wall Street people have gotten their way. They're increasing their offices in China, increasing investment. They have blocked any serious export controls. And probably to me, the most shocking single example, we have a congressman from North Carolina named Patrick McHenry, otherwise seems to be an economic conservative. He stepped up and did one of the most important, terrible things I could even imagine. The Congress of both houses and the Biden administration wanted to require American companies before they invest in high-tech sectors in China, report it. So there'd be a chance for the US government to try to block it. It's very simple legislation, a report before investment in high tech. McHenry got Republicans together to go in and block it. It had a
Mhm.
majority even in the Senate, like 85 votes. And he blocked it. It was withdrawn. It's not happening. He's retiring from Congress, so there's no way to challenge
Yeah.
him. But for me, it's
Well,
a microcosm of just how bad things
yeah.
are. We can't even get companies to be forced to report their investments in China.
I think we have to look at the workflow on that one. McHenry was an acolyte and tool for Kevin McCarthy, who was a tool
Mhm.
for Paul Ryan, who was a tool for John Boehner. There is a linkage to the current speaker, Michael Johnson. You have a string of four idiots who haven't got a clue about foreign policy or anything approaching complex policy analysis. So I think we're well done with McHenry and his like leaving Congress. The problem is we've got so many of them staying. You get the last word here, Michael.
Well, along those same lines, Kevin McCarthy for a long time was under pressure to create a China Select Commission that would look at the China threat, have hearings, and then propose legislation. He stalled on it for about 2 years, saying he wanted to have the Democrats come on board. They finally did, and then McCarthy sprung the surprise. The Select Committee on China will have no legislative jurisdiction, cannot propose any legislation, and cannot comment on legislation by other members. So it was I hate to say neutered, but it was very limited in its power, the Select Committee. They've held about 30 hearings. They get some press attention, but they haven't really done anything by Kevin McCarthy's orders. So it's another example of what I'm calling, Lou, the policy paralysis on China in Washington at the present time.
And a congressman, an ex-congressman by the name of Mike Gallagher, who was a complete and utter sellout, who chaired that select committee without doing so much as coming up with even an interesting 3-page report on a passing concern. The ignorance is just incredible. Michael, your knowledge is impressive as always, and we thank you for being with us. Look forward to you coming back soon. Michael Pillsbury, appreciate it. Thank you. Muslims have radically transformed the state of Michigan. Parts of it are unrecognizable now, like whole swaths of foreign countries have been dropped in the Midwest. For people like Osama Sablani, that's a sign of progress. Sablani is the publisher of the Arab American News, and during a speech last month, he heralded the rise of Islam in America, which he said is headed to the White House. Here he is.
We have the best that we can offer to the United States of America, not only in Michigan, but across the country. And we offered our best. The best is yet to come. I can be very confident to tell you that we are on the road to the White House, to the Congress, to the decision-making everywhere in the United States. 40 years ago, we had a mayor for this town who talks about the Arab problem. Guess what? The Arabs are ruling Dearborn and Dearborn Heights and Hamtramck. So brothers and sisters, we are on the road.
Well, I hope we don't become too much of a problem for Osama. He doesn't feel the need to conceal his views even a little bit. He knows America has been weakened from within. And meanwhile, Afghanistan war veteran and Congressman Brian Mast has a wake-up call for all of those woke folks who are concerned with civilian casualties in the Israel-Gaza war ahead of the provocation on October 7th, that massacre. Congressman Mast says you can count on civilian deaths for as long as the barbaric cowards of Hamas insist on hiding behind civilians, women, and children. Here is Congressman Mast with a clear, succinct message for the Middle East, Europe, the soulless Hamas activists in this country, and the weak-kneed numbskulls in the Congress, the Senate, and the Biden White House asylum.
Unfortunately, we do not see outrage for is that there will continue to be civilian casualties if the world does not become up in arms about the fact that Hamas purposefully embeds themselves with civilians, purposefully places civilians in front of themselves, aid workers in front of themselves, purposely tries to use UNRWA as a location, their locations, to build tunnels for Hamas that go into Egypt and other places. As long as that's allowed to continue, then we will see what unfortunately the world doesn't want to see, which is a civilian killed here or a civilian killed there because of what Hamas does.
Mast is absolutely correct. And those who oppose his views, in my judgment, are nothing more than fools, and likely their only motivation to be collaboration with evil itself. Well, turning now to a great deal, as you know, Mike Lindell, with a passion to help you get the best sleep of your life. He invented the world's best pillow. He created the famous Giza Dream Sheets, and they are the best sheets you will ever sleep on. My wife and I have been sleeping on them for years now. You will never find a better night's sleep. Your best night's sleep just got even better, though. For a limited time, you can get a queen size set of those Giza sheets for $59.98. King size, just $10 more. Those are the lowest prices in history. Mike and all the My Pillow employees appreciate all of your great support during these times and want to thank you by giving you free shipping on your entire order today. To get the best specials ever, go to mypillow.com, call 800-977-9152, and use promo code Dobbs. That's DOBBS. You get the famous Giza Dream Sheets, queen size, for $59.98, king size $10 more. So call 800-977-9152 or go to mypillow.com, promo code Dobbs. That's Dobbs to get free shipping on your entire order today. And please join us on my podcast each and every day, The Great America Show. Former Mississippi Governor Phil Bryant is now the finance director for the Trump 24 campaign in the Magnolia State. In a recent interview, Bryant revealed that donors are reluctant to give to the Trump campaign for fear of getting a visit from the FBI. Here he is.
I'm finance director for Donald Trump in Mississippi, so we raise money. I've talked to a number of very wealthy individuals that God has blessed that say, I can't give money to Donald Trump because the FBI would show up at my door.
Wow.
And I think of what you just said. If you make a legitimate, honest campaign contribution to the Republican nominee for president, the FBI will come to your door. And they acknowledge that's a reality.
In the United States of America.
In the United States of America.
Well, it certainly doesn't sound like America, does it? It sounds more like Stalinist Soviet Union before the wall fell. And now, in other news, T-Mobile will buy U.S. Cellular's wireless operations in a whopping $4.4 billion deal. Great news for T-Mobile, but it means that as businesses consolidate and grow, consumers will also have fewer choices. Meanwhile, even Biden voters can't feel too optimistic about the state of this economy. Most are feeling the pain. A Reuters Ipsos tracking poll found that 36% now approve of Biden's job performance, just 36%. Millions of people are being crushed beneath the Biden economic policies. Yet some Democrats remain mystified as why Americans are outraged at Joe Biden and the Biden economy. Well, John Lonsky joins us now. He's the founder and president of the Lonsky Group, and he has important views about the economy and these markets and what condition our condition is in. John, great to have you with us. Things haven't changed much since the last time you and I talked a couple of weeks ago, but I have to say, they also don't seem to be getting better. We're looking at a global economy that seems to me, at least, is out of whack. The instability politically in Europe is matched by the United States, of course, which is, I think, surprising to most people. And we've got, right now, we've got all sorts of threats, whether it be from China, from Iran, the Middle East, or, of course, Russia. We've even got a new national secretary general of NATO who wants to launch missiles into Russia. I mean, this is starting to be a little bit of a calculation now about what will happen to this global economy and this domestic economy of ours. Your thoughts?
That's right. You cannot have much of a global economy if you have all of these global conflicts. If you have adventurism, on the part of China with Taiwan, you worry about Iran and its impact on Israel and Gaza. And of course, we have Russia and the Ukraine. Why is it that over the past several years, we suddenly have all of these horrible problems that are impeding the smooth functioning of the world economy? And this is, lead to eventually slower growth and probably some big problems for the United States. Today we had an auction of 2-year Treasury notes, and we are more than ever in the past dependent upon foreign investors to buy U.S. Treasury debt. Today, they sort of like stayed away from the auction. And as a result, we've had bond yields rise, and that brings us back to continued worry over that 7% 30-year mortgage yield. Lou, I think it has to be emphasized that back in 2019, prior to COVID, that 30-year mortgage yield was at 4.2%. Now it's at 7%. And American voters are very angry about this and will show their anger come the upcoming presidential and congressional elections.
I don't want to be partisan in that or in this discussion at all, John, but at some point, do you think that the Marxists in this country who are leading the Democrat Party are going to understand that they've authored a debacle, a catastrophe, because they're the ones who put in Kamala Harris as number 2 on the ticket, Joe Biden, cognitively impaired. He was then, he is now, and only worse. He's politically and, in every other way, compromised, and is seemingly unable to put together a single policy, whether it's domestic or foreign policy, that makes any sense at all. The wheels are coming off. The Politico did a great article on the fact that top Democrats right now are scared to death. They are melting down without any question whatsoever. They're in a panic, and we're 5 months to Election Day.
Yeah, and the Democratic Party may be facing a very hard choice following that upcoming debate, June 27th, between Donald Trump and Joe Biden. And if Joe Biden does very poorly in this debate, if it appears as though he's mentally, cognitively challenged, there could be quite a movement within the Democratic Party to get rid of Biden on the presidential ticket. Now, how they do this, I don't know. Some claim they're going to ask Michelle Obama to take his place. But again, she's from the left. And as you said, Lou, this country is moving to the center. It's moving to the right. It has had it with left-wing politicians, left-wing bureaucrats, and left-wing intellectuals. My own advice to the Democrats would be go ahead and try to choose a very strong leader from what's left of the center of the Democratic Party. And there they have to go outside of politics, cross their fingers, and ask maybe somebody like Jamie Dimon, who I still believe is a registered Democrat, to run for president. Otherwise, forget it.
Yeah, I think asking Jamie Dimon, you might get a quicker answer than some people suppose. Jamie's been talking politics for a long time, but his politics are, to me, highly questionable. He's right in line with the hard landing crowd. He is right in line with the folks who seem to think that the panacea is to do what corporate America says, rather than get in charge of our monetary policy and our fiscal policy, which is how we got in this position. And to think it's all coming from the left right now in this irresponsible, reckless, and sinister, destructive Biden regime.
It makes absolutely no sense. If you look around the world, you think the left would at least understand that when you push for radical change in society and the economy and social relations, you're taking a big chance, because history is filled with examples of states that really got themselves into a lot of trouble when they moved too far to a political extreme. I really don't understand what's driving them. They're not unifiers, they're dividers. And when you keep dividing, eventually you split everything apart in a manner that proves to be socially destructive. And of course, this would be very damaging to the economy.
Yes, and it is right now just damaging this economy. I hope not mortally, but certainly painfully. And this is, I think everyone has to understand clearly. And these markets right now, I think, are reacting to the realization in large measure that the Biden regime is filled with Obama Marxist Dems who are leading this cognitively impaired president along. He's turned over a 2,000-mile border. Think about it, John. What economists do you know over the course of the last 20 years who would have said, what would be the economic impact statement for turning over a 2,000-mile long border with Mexico, turning it over to the drug cartels, not to the Mexican government, but to the Mexican drug cartels? What do you think the reaction would be in the markets? And if you had 100,000 Americans dying every year from fentanyl, and no one is even protesting, no one is even sending a strong letter to Andres Lopez Obrador. I mean, what in the hell are we thinking right now in this country? Nobody could have anticipated that.
I don't know of any example historically where we have this type of open border. My goodness, I've never heard of this before. We do have restrictions on imports when goods are imported into the United States. They have to go through some sort of clearance, some checking. But with human beings, who knows who they are, coming up from Mexico into the United States, well, the devil may care. Just let them come in droves. We don't care who it is. We're going to get you in here. Then we'll check maybe later on to see whether or not you have a criminal background or a background in terror. This is ridiculous. And the real bad thing about this, Lou, is that this tells me that the Democratic Party picks and chooses the laws that will be obeyed. This is lawlessness on a scale never seen before. And, unfortunately, this sends the wrong message to a lot of people in this country. It tells them that the law is a function of political preference, and whether or not we obey a certain law depends upon who's in power. This is dangerous. This is very dangerous for a democracy if the rules of the game fluctuate according to whoever is running the presidency or Congress.
Andres Manuel Lopez Obrador, the president of Mexico, will be stepping down with his hand-picked candidate for president, likely to succeed him, all but certain to succeed him. And we're going to have more question marks because we don't know what her relationship will be with the Mexican drug cartels. The power of the cartels in Mexico is higher than it's ever been before, stronger than it's ever been before, and it's insinuated itself across every state in the United States with drug distribution, sex trafficking, you name it. That's their multi-tens of billion-dollar enterprise every year. It is bleeding this country, and morally, ethically, legally. We are right now on the precipice, in my opinion, of seeing what true destabilization looks like, because this marketplace of ours, this grand economy, I don't believe, John, I want your opinion, I don't believe it can stand a heck of a lot more in the way of shocks that are coming from societal and political forces that have been unleashed.
I think you're right, Lou, and I want to comment. I make one additional comment, and that is that it seems as though the Mexican drug cartels and not the United States government are in control of immigration policy for the United States at the southern border, and that is absolutely abhorrent and ridiculous. As far as where the economy is going, a little bit of anecdotal evidence. I was talking to a guy, fully employed, six-figure income, not worried about losing his job, but in his mind, the U.S. economy is in a recession. He said we are already in a recession because he has problems making ends meet, because of this extended bout of inflation. And in fact, you find out that I think the CPI index is something like 17% higher than what would have been the case if inflation had proceeded at its average pace of the 10 years ended 2019. That's bad news. And he's also telling me on the jobs front, there's a sense of stagnation, that nobody is going anyplace. You're not losing your job, but they're not giving you a large enough salary increase to keep pace with inflation. And you worry as though that these employees have hit a wall. And when you feel as though there's no upside potential, what's going to suffer? The effort put forth by employees at work will be less than otherwise. It tells me productivity suffers, and we are going to be stuck in this current state of what would be called stagflation.
Yeah, I think you're exactly right, and I cannot believe that there's not more discussion about the prospect of disinflation than there is inflation, even though we're looking at high inflation historically. We've got a Fed that seems to be married to 2% targets on inflation, and they will not recognize what they're doing to the real estate market, to the housing market, to the economy. In my opinion, I want to get your reaction to this. But all they have to do is deal with reality, which is those targets are wrong for right now. We are looking at the prospect, I think you're exactly right, again, of disinflation, stagflation. If these fools at the Fed, who, by the way, they're not an independent organization, don't anybody get fooled by that idea. These guys are working for the Biden regime. Don't doubt it for a minute. Your thoughts, John?
Yeah, look at housing. You have the worst case of home unaffordability since roughly 2006, 2007. And we well know how that particular issue was eventually resolved. So would it be surprising if we go through a period of home price deflation? I wouldn't be shocked by that. And speaking about real estate, I live close to a pretty Tony suburb. It's called Scarsdale, New York. And so a real estate person there told me that a lot of those well-off commuters north of New York City cannot sell their homes, that there's something like 30 unsold homes in the price range of $2 million to $3 million that cannot find a buyer. This is a situation, I think, on the housing front that will only get worse. And the only way to get out of this problem of home unaffordability is through some combination of lower mortgage yields, lower home prices, and hopefully faster income growth.
Absolutely. John Lunsky's prescription, we can all sign on to that. John, appreciate it as always. Thanks so much for sharing your views, and come back soon if you will. And I want to tell you about a fantastic deal. As you know, Mike Lindell has a passion to get you the best sleep of your life. After he invented the world's best pillow, he created the famous Giza Dream Sheets. They're the best sheets you will ever sleep on, I guarantee it. Your best night's sleep just got even better though. For a limited time, you get a queen size set for $59.98, king size just $10 more, the lowest prices in history. Mike and MyPillow employees continue to be canceled by those big box stores, and they still are being attacked by the national left-wing media. But they appreciate all of your great support during these times and want to thank you by giving you free shipping on your entire order today. To get the best specials ever, go to mypillow.com or call 800-977-9152 and use promo code Dobbs, D-O-B-B-S. You get the famous Giza Dream Sheets, queen size, $59.98, king size, $10 more. So call 800-977-9152 or go to mypillow.com, promo code Dobbs to get free shipping on your entire order today. And please join us for my podcast, The Great America Show, each day. Thanks for being with us this evening. Join us here tomorrow. Coming up right after this, the Lindell Report. Mike with a fantastic show all lined up. Good night. God bless you, and God bless America.